So boom. I wasn't gonna talk about American Indian history anymore because so much ignorance is involved in it. But when I saw that so-called native, which we all know which is a mixed white person, talking about how there's no Native American restaurants in America.
Always, why aren't there Native American restaurants all over the place? Why can't you go in a city like New York and find food from literally all over the world, but nothing that represents the land that you're standing on, especially indigenous cultures. But it's really just a story of American colonialism when it comes down to it, and how indigenous peoples are treated in the reservation systems, and, just the assimilation of our cultures, the breakdown of our cultures. And we're just coming into an era where we're starting this reclamation process. We're starting to reclaim our past, our connection with our ancestry, our knowledge with foods and the food systems that our ancestors utilized. And, so when I did this work, I just built my own philosophy of what it meant to have a modern day indigenous restaurant and what it means to decolonize per se. And so cutting out.
What does it mean?
So for me, it was just to decolonize was understanding what colonization meant, right? So just understanding what happened, just like I said. And, colonization is the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying with settlers, exploiting it economically. You can break that down to exploitation for profit, and placing settlers there to maintain control of regions that had nothing to do with you.
I was like, no, we not finna do that. Because first and foremost, we know soul food is American Indian food. Now, if you're talking about Native American, like the mixed white people, I don't know nothing about that, but I do know that soul food is American Indian food, and it is rooted in indigenous culture. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make a video on TikTok and let's just, see how it goes. And surprisingly, I had a lot of brothers and sisters that were really resonating with the content. And then, of course, I had the ignorant people. Can y'all believe that people were in the comment section telling me that corn and hominy is African and that corn is grown everywhere, so therefore it's not indigenous to America? The amount of people talking about how soul food is German food, it's just disgusting how people are trying to put soul food as European culture, but yet want to neglect the fact that soul food is rooted in Aboriginal American cuisine. And the crazy part is that all this information that I'm posting, you can literally find it. It's not hard to find. And when we get to the end and I show y'all the discourse about gumbo, I cannot believe the amount of people who are so hung up on gumbo being African, when it's in fact a Choctaw cuisine. I showed a book source talking about this, and these people were doing selective reading. And this is part of the reason why I do not even post stuff like this anymore, because people don't know how to freaking read. And if they are reading, they're only reading what they want to read. There were plenty of times where I had to tell people to read the whole thing instead of just reading sections that caters to what they are trying to negate, which is that African is the reason why of gumbo came into existence, which is not true. So I'm going to show y'all my videos. I'm debating if I even screenshot some comments because it's just a hot ass mess. And ancestors, y'all need to get y'all children, because a lot of the people that were commenting about how squash isn't soul food, how grits isn't soul food, how hominy isn't soul food, it's like this new age that we're dealing with don't know nothing about the culture. They don't talk to their elders or nothing. The only thing that these people could tell me is African American, Native American, Mind you, I don't call myself Native American. And I use the term Native American because they do it. I'll put that in quotation marks. But not American Indian. So, some people were saying how I should have, really broke it down. But I don't need to break down something that many so-called black people already know. They just don't want to accept their Aboriginal American roots. They always calling their grandma self-hating. So you really can't help people that think that their elders that are teaching them about indigenous culture is lying to them. So, and then of course we had the natives in the comic section, like people summoned them. They were summoning them, but not me. Y'all know I don't talk about them folks. I don't talk about Bruno. But they did come to the comic section, and there were so many so-called Choctaw people talking about how gumbo didn't come from Choctaw people. So we got these people from the reservation commenting, trying to negate my point, and they don't even know their own culture. And yet this is who people think is the original. But honestly, I'm just making this video just to put it on record. You heard it from the Aboriginal American first. These natives are not going to teach y'all the true history of Aboriginal American people because they don't even know it. They don't even know the history of the culture that they come from, but always talking about where your tribal ID card. Why can't you speak the language? Da 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 da. Well, if you can speak the language, and how the F you don't know that gumbo come from Choctaw people? Like, girl, bye. But anyway, let me show y'all these videos and possibly these screenshots too, because it's a whole lot. But I want to put this on record because I want y'all to know who really knows the culture and who doesn't at the end of the day. So you never had cornbread before. And mind you, cornbread was originally known as Indian bread, according to the 1989 Webster Dictionary. So you never had cornbread before. You never had grits. You never had squash. You never had hominy, gumbo. Come on now. See, this is why it's important to stay in school, because how is it that you're trying to make this a logical connection between the two? Tomatoes are native to the Americas. You're definitely correct about that. And Italians do use them for their pizza and whatever else. However, that just goes to show the influence American Indian culture and cuisine have on the entire world. And that's what you're missing. And I'm going to throw in a little fun fact for you too, since obviously you don't know how to read or comprehend. 600 out of the 640 crops that are grown in Africa today come from the Americas. So a lot of the food that y'all think that is African is actually indigenous to the Americas. And to bring up the whole squash argument you're trying to go back and forth about, squash is a staple in Southern cuisine. And you know what else is a staple of Southern cuisine? Soul food. So instead of trying to be argumentative, actually look this stuff up. Like, you can actually learn stuff without being so defensive and argumentative. Because the way you're going, you're never going to learn anything if you keep that mindset. Okay, hold on, my love. Hold on, my love. You have, though. You have. So many black people know about their indigenous roots, but they don't know it because they either see it as African or taught that it's just black culture or African culture. You absolutely know. I guarantee you, you know. I don't know if you are a continental African or a black American or both. But I guarantee you, you know some information about what you would think as Black American that is actually American Indian in origin. I promise you, you know something. You know something. Go talk to your grandma. Go talk to your elders. They know something. What type of the legend goes that y'all do not understand? It's a legend. I'm pretty sure I stated that. But however, the origin of gumbo remains the same. The article still talked about how gumbo origins come from the Choctaw and how Africans remixed it. So no one's not denying that. Well, I'm not denying that. But y'all keep trying to rewrite the story of gumbo. But you know what? It's cool because I got another source for you. Now we got this book called Gumbo by Jonathan Oliver. And he published this year. Go check out this book. It's a really good book. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to read from this book, okay? And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know how to pronounce some of these words, so don't come for me in the comment section. I'm going to ignore you. And another thing, for some reason, TikTok don't allow you to move the sticker of the person that commented around so you can read, the screenshot if, you're doing green screen. So I'm going to have to read from the book on my computer. So if you see me looking away, it's because I'm reading off the computer. So whatever, don't judge me. And if you judge me, I don't give a damn. Due to this murky linguistic language, Bernard admitted that he can't completely rule out linguistic origins that also lie with Choctaw's gumbo, noting that it's possible the word gumbo draws on both Choctaw and West African sources. And this is where it gets juicy. Danny Petrella, who is a member of the Choctaw tribe in central Louisiana, believes exactly that. According to oral histories from his ancestors, he told me okra gumbo and what he called Choctaw gumbo are two distinct dishes with separate origins, just as the evolution of okra stew included additions from other ethnic groups. Petrella claimed that Choctaw gumbo began with plant material seafood or other meat and fillet, but then later came the sausage, rice, and cayenne. The okra gumbo came by the way of African people, he explained. That dish kind of intermingled with the Choctaw gumbo and formed a cultural gumbo. Due to physical and linguistic resemblances, Petrella said the two soups were lumped together as gumbo. I'm not going to read all this, but I'm going to read this part. For other groups of Louisiana Native Americans, saffron has also been an important part of their culture as medicine and for use of fillet. Janie, a member of the United Houma Nation from Bayou, told me oral history suggests that a sort of gumbo thickened with fillet has been cooked by the Houma since before the colonial era. Back when Houma were cooking, not out of iron pots, but sacks made with animal skins. Her late mother, Mary, grew a patch of saffron trees in their yard in order to have a steady supply of fillet, as did many neighbors in the community. Typically, she harvested the leaves in August before they turned orange in the fall. And the article also talks about how traditional gumbo didn't involve the French-inspired roux at all. In fact, a broth thickened with roux is considered by many Houma to be a stew. And the book also goes on to say the idea then is that there were two dishes in early colonial Louisiana, a Native American soup with fillet, cooked by people such as Choctaw and the Houma, and also an okra dish stewed up by Africans. Eventually, both of these soups became referred to as gumbo. The book goes on to talk about how people amalgamated the two dishes that are distinct and different. So an excerpt Shane K. Bernard drew from P. de Le, how you pronounce that last name, 1773 account. It says these leaves used in sauces give them a pleasant taste. The gummy principle is so sticky that a pinch of this powder is enough to make a viscous broth. This dish is known as American gumbo, but we must distinguish this American stew from the one called gumbo fivi. Here y'all go bringing up okra, and that was incorporated later. Africans followed the original recipe until they incorporated rice and okra in it. All right, look at my part 1 of this video. Because, yes, there are 2 different types of gumbo, but Choctaw is the original. All right, let's get into it. Let's read it. And I'm still reading off my computer because I'm not trying to read off of the screenshot. So anyway, let's continue with this book. Mind you, this book is called Gumbo by Jonathan Oliver. Let's get into it. Chris Smith in The Whole Okra tackled the filet origins theory in his book. While he noted filet could have been a seasonal substitute, he also wrote that saffras could have been used to develop an individual stew that later melded with the okra preparation and assumed the same name. Others aren't convinced. Cynthia Nobles argued in New Orleans cuisine that Choctaw origins of gumbo are unlikely. She noted that gumbo's historic pairing with rice is one of 2 convincing reasons why neither Native American stew nor French, whatever that is, morphed into today's soupy gumbo. Native American stews were centered around corn, an ingredient rarely found in gumbo. Although modern gumbo, listen, don't contain corn. I don't know how to pronounce his name, so we're going to call him Koo. Koo's 18th century account, which mentions a collection of early gumbo ingredients, challenges Noble's assertion by displaying that corn was indeed present. Hearn's collection of recipes, published around 85 years later, also mentioned adding green corn to gumbo, referring to tender sweet corn. In an essay in Acadians and Cajuns, the folklorist John wrote that rice was reigned supreme as the starch of choice in gumbo bowls only since the late 19th century. Before that, Louisiana cleft more closely to the rest of the South, and the starch that gumbo covered was cornmeal mush, known as first by the Native American term, I don't know how to pronounce that, but y'all see it, and later by the African influence couscous. He wrote, adding that the corn mush consumed by the colonial French and later by the Cajuns was in fact a Native American inheritance. Early gumbos were served over this corn mush. In the writings of Frenchmen named C.C. Robin, who between 1803 and 1805 traveled to Louisiana, there is a description of Acadians eating gumbo over a cornmeal mush. Today, corn has faded into gumbo obscurity as commercial rice agriculture became more common, and the dish, which evolved regularly in its infancy, changed as other ingredients became more widely available. And since you have not seen my last video, I'm going to reread this part again, okay? Due to this murky linguistic lineage, Bernard admitted that he can't completely rule out linguistic origins that also lie with the Choctaw gumbo, noting that it's possible the word gumbo draws on both Choctaw and West African sources. Danny Petrella, who is a member of the Choctaw tribe in central Louisiana, believes exactly that. According to oral histories and his ancestors, he told me okra gumbo and what he called Choctaw gumbo are 2 distinct dishes, separate origins. Just as the evolution of okra stew included additions from other ethnic groups, Petrella claimed that Choctaw gumbo began with plant-based material, seafood and other meat and filet, And then later came the sausage, rice, and cayenne. The okra gumbo came by the African people, he explained. All right, let's continue reading. For other groups of Louisiana Native Americans, saffron has also been an important part of their culture as medicine and for the use of filet. Okay, Luster, a member of the United Huma Nation from Bayou du Large, told me oral stories suggest that a sort of gumbo thickened with filet has been cooked by Huma since before the colonial era. Back when Huma were cooking not out of iron pots, but sacks made with animal skins. Her late mother, Mary, grew a patch of saffron trees in their yard in order to have a steady supply of filet, as did many neighbors in the community. So I'm not getting what y'all not getting. Y'all are confusing our gumbo with African gumbo, but our gumbo obviously came first. The okra, the rice, the cayenne, and all the other stuff, that stuff came later. This gumbo has Choctaw origins. Enough said. And the same thing could be said about Mexican food. So what's your point? I really wasn't even going to go back and forth with this comment, but you got your relatives all in the comment section defending you, which I think is so cute, that I hurt your feelings that your relatives have to come and speak for you. I think that's so cute. But overall, I really just want people who are scrolling on TikTok to really see what is happening right in front of them. Because people love to say, oh, Black Americans don't have roots in America. They're not indigenous. They don't have any indigenous roots. They don't have any knowledge about indigenous cultures. But yet that y'all don't even know that soul food is rooted in indigenous culture. And the fact that y'all trying to sit here and say, oh, well, it has European and African influences. So does Mexican food. African food has indigenous influences too. And yet no one's not talking about that. And let me be clear, indigenous American influences in African food, if you're confused. And your relatives trying to talk about what clan I'm from and how I can't speak Choctaw, but yet these folks don't even know that gumbo comes from Choctaw Nation. The people that y'all steady try to sit here and claim to be Black and pretendians are literally carrying the culture that y'all refuse to acknowledge. I can't believe the amount of Choctaw people in my comic section talking about, oh, well, we didn't create gumbo. We didn't do this. And like, you don't know. You don't know. You don't know. There are technically two different versions of gumbo, and yet the American Indian version, the Choctaw version, is the earliest one, and it was here before the colonial period. And yet y'all don't know that, but steady in my comic section trying to talk down on Black Americans having an indigenous ancestry and those who are disconnected from their ancestry. So I don't want to hear all that bussy popping and yapping in my comic section when I call you a mixed white person, because that's literally who you act. You act like a colonizer who has mixed heritage. Somehow people want to sit here and call us African, call us pretendian, all these different names when we acknowledge our indigenous heritage. But when we call you a mixed white person, then all of a sudden now y'all want to cry, now y'all want to complain, now y'all want to sit here and say that we discriminating, like you wasn't discriminating against us because we are darker skinned and a lot of us are categorized as Black, like many indigenous people, indigenous American people, weren't classified as Black, colored, and Negro to begin with. And since we on this topic too, there are plenty of indigenous people, when they were being pushed out of their homelands, being classified as Black or Negro because they didn't want to deal with the system. They didn't want to go on reservations. But yet here y'all are talking about DNA tests, tribal ID cards. Like, that has nothing to do with indigenous identity. Like, decolonize your mind. There were East Indians and American Indians being labeled as Black, colored, and Negro. But I don't hear y'all talking about that though. Like, everybody want to talk about being indigenous, but don't even know the culture, don't even know the history. And supposedly y'all are supposed to be engulfed in the traditions and the cultures. Y'all supposed to be enrolled in these tribes and these nations, but don't even know your own culture. Like, get it together. you.